Hello and welcome to Wagner's Tech Talk. Today we're going to take a look at an all-in-one retro gaming device, the Super Console X. This unit came with 2 controllers and was preloaded with over 40,000 games. Let's check it out right now. Let's take a quick look at the features of the Super Console X. The CPU is an upgraded S90M chip at 1.5 GHz. It has 1 GB of RAM. The storage is a 128 GB microSD card and officially supports up to a 256 GB card. The OS is EmuElect. It has an Ethernet port as well as built-in Wi-Fi at 2.4 GHz. It was unable to see my 5 GHz Wi-Fi band. It has HDMI output as well as an AV output jack, but there is no AV cable included. There are two 2.4 GHz gamepads and the dongle, a 4-port USB hub, and the included microSD card indicates there are more than 41,000 games pre-installed. Some of those games play very well, and others don't play at all. So let's go ahead and check out the box to the Super Console X. Looking at it, it shows that it runs 80 plus emulators, including PSP, PS1, Dreamcast, Neo Geo, Sega, MAME, GBA, and so forth. On the side of the box, not a whole lot there. And here it shows you what ports are available on the device. And here it shows you what the contents includes: the Super Console, the SD card, game controllers, 2 of those, HDMI cable, and power adapter. Now let's go ahead and open the box. And here you've got a whole bunch of stuff. There's the power supply, and it is a 12 volt, 1 amp power supply, a 4-port USB 2.0 hub, and it looks like a 6-foot HDMI cable, and the Super Console X itself. Here's where the microSD card is. It's already pre-installed for you, and the 2 USB, your Ethernet, your AV output, your HDMI, your power input, and an on-off switch. On the bottom, you have a little bit of ventilation and some rubber feet. It looks like these are buttons, but they don't do anything. The manual, it's so-so. It's got a little bit of helpful information. Now we'll remove the controllers from the box. The dongle for the controllers was just loosely sitting in the box, which is kind of concerning. Now let's move on to the setup. On this device, I do recommend removing the microSD and making a copy, which is easier said than done. It's kind of a pain in the rear in order to get this tape off, but the spring works great. It shot a couple feet away. Anyway, it's got a 128 gigabyte SanDisk microSD. I'm going to go ahead and pop it into this sleeve and insert it into the computer. I'm going to start up Win32 Disk Imager. This will allow you to make a copy of it. Click the folder icon and select the location where you want to create the image file. I'm going to call it the Super Console X ORI backup.img. Make sure you've selected the correct drive that contains your microSD and click read. This process will take a while. It is a lot of data to copy, a lot of games. But once it's complete, click the OK button and go ahead and exit out of Win32 Disk Imager. Out of 117 gigabytes, there's 113 gig that's used up by games. Looking at the partition here, it is a FAT32 partition, which means it's accessible by Windows. There's only about 3 gigabytes free for adding your own games. Speaking of which, let's take a quick look at the folder structure. If we go to the games partition, go to the ROM subdirectory, here's where you would copy any new ROMs that you want to add yourself. You just simply drag and drop them into the associated folder, and EmuElect will pick it up. Let's go ahead and plug everything up. There's the power, and you'll want to remove the back cover to the controller and insert 2 AAA batteries into each of the controllers. Now we'll plug in the dongle into the USB hub, and the hub into the Super Console X, and now the HDMI into our TV or monitor. I did burn this image to a 256 gigabyte microSD card, and now I think we're ready to check it out. Let's go ahead and power it on. And I'm going to zip through here real quick as it boots up. There's an on-off switch on the inside of the stick, so you want to go ahead and turn that on. If you don't see the LEDs, just hit the start button. And now I'm going to switch over to video capture so we can get a better look at the screen. And on the bottom you can see the number of games under each of the emulators, so I'm going to just go through these so you can quickly see how many games are actually installed on the Super Console X. And as you can see, 41,490 in total. So you definitely have plenty of games to choose from on various systems as well as various consoles. Now I'm going to quickly speed through the rest of these. You feel free to pause it if it's going too fast and you can't see it, but this part was taking actually too long during video editing. There are just a bunch of emulators and of course a bunch of games as well. To get into the settings menu, just press start on the controller. I'm going to go ahead and go into the Emulate settings, and this very first option, video mode, if you set it to the wrong thing, you may wind up with something like this, which will basically make the unit unusable. While you may be able to go in through the configuration files and find the setting and set it to the proper setting, this is the whole reason why I highly recommend making a backup copy before you do anything. Now we'll go into the game settings, and if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see missing BIOS. If you have any issues with games that don't play, that's a good place to start. Under the controller settings, if you need to adjust or remap your controllers, you can do that here. UI settings, you can go in and change the theme. I'll go ahead and quickly change it over to this one so you can get a look at a different theme. Pretty cool. And if we go into network settings, I'm going to go ahead and enable Wi-Fi. And from here, if I hit back and then go back in, you can see it's connected. Of course, you'll have to enter an SSID and your passphrase for your Wi-Fi. If we scroll down to updates and downloads, you can go to the theme selection, and if you want to, you could download some new themes. And if you have any difficulty with the A and B buttons, go into System Settings, and then on down to the Developer option at the bottom. Then scroll or page down using the triggers until you see the switch A, B buttons in Emulation Station, and that may make things easier for you. To properly shut down the unit, go to Quit, and then Shut Down System, and allow the unit to shut down properly. Now let's move on to the fun part, the gameplay. One thing I want to let you know is there's a lot of weirdness with the MAME emulator. First of all, there's no samples. You should be hearing Mario running, but you don't. That's because the samples aren't there. To exit, you have to press R3, then move down to exit, and then press your action button. Another weirdness is that you can't hook up a keyboard to this unit and remap the buttons like you can on a Raspberry Pi 4. So if configurability is something you have in mind, this may not be a good device for you, at least when it comes to the MAME emulator. And lastly, for some of the other MAME games, not that many, but some of them that I've tried, you'll get this, which is basically the device can't handle the screen resolution. I also saw this with Joust and a few others. Well, with that out of the way, some of the other arcade games under Final Burn Alpha, such as 1943, do play pretty good. In this particular game, the audio didn't sound exactly right, but it was pretty close. Street Fighter III, Third Strike, did play very good, in my opinion. It was very challenging and very fast-paced. And of course you can play your old retro consoles. This happens to be the first one I ever owned, the Atari 2600, playing Asteroids. The SNES also played very well. Here's an example of Donkey Kong Country. While not all games play equally well on the Dreamcast, Crazy Taxi did impress me. There was no audio stuttering or anything, it was very smooth and played quite well. Sonic Adventure 2 also fell into this category.
Attention all units. Suspect seen heading south. Block all major roads and capture the suspect.
Now we'll move on over to the Nintendo 64, playing Diddy Kong Racing. My daughter saw me playing this game and wanted to join in, so this is actually her gameplay. She absolutely loved it, had a great time. As you can see, the frame rate looks pretty good here. Gameplay is nice and fluid. Now we'll take a look at Super Mario 64. It also played very well. Didn't have a whole lot of issues with this game at all. However, not all games on the Nintendo 64 play as well. For example, here's Cruisin' USA at a very low frame rate and a lot of audio distortion. It's really going to be hit or miss on the N64 for several of the games, but for those that play well, you're going to have a lot of fun. Moving on to the PSP, we are playing Darius Burst, which is actually a game I've never played before, surprisingly. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. Enjoyed it. The boss fights were pretty impressive. The graphics look great. Just an overall fun game to play. Now we're looking at Hero of Sparta. Another fun game that plays fairly well. There was a little bit of stuttering here and there, but not too bad. Frame rate was acceptable. Not great, but acceptable. Now we'll check out Twisted Metal 2 on the PlayStation. This is a game I'm not so good at. Took a lot of video editing to find some footage here that was halfway interesting to watch without seeing me die. Now we'll look at one of my favorites on the PlayStation, Tekken 3.
Round 1. Fight!
I hope you found this look at the Super Console X helpful. For many games on the Nintendo 64 and the Dreamcast, it's really going to be hit or miss. If you already own a Raspberry Pi 4 Model B, then I would stick with that, in my opinion. You'll have a lot more flexibility, and the gameplay will be quite a bit better. Although, if you don't already own one, then this is certainly something to consider, given that some games are going to play very well, while others either are unplayable or don't play at all. It's still very easy to get set up and get to playing games, honestly. I do highly recommend you make a backup copy of the microSD, as we discussed earlier. Otherwise, you may find it very difficult to find another copy of it should anything go wrong. Well, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please click the like button. If you want to see more from Wagner's Tech Talk, please click the subscribe. And with that, I will talk to you very soon.